have been following along with us, we are now on video number 3 of my Sew a Medieval Smock with Me series. I am sewing the medieval smock from the Medieval Tailor's Assistant book by Sarah Thursfield. I will link the book in the description box below. I'm also going to go ahead and give you a link to video 1 and video 2 of this series, so if you want to get started on your medieval sewing journey, this is a great place to start. I'm excited to finally be finished with this smock. I apologize for the length of time it's taken to get this finishing video up. I've had a couple of commissions and some other things that have gone on the past few weeks that have kind of taken me away from this particular project. Well, let's just get right to it. So here we have video number 3 of the Sew a Medieval Smock with Me series.
All right, first thing I'm going to do here is to trim one side of the seam allowances down to about 1/8 of an inch. I personally like to fell my seams toward the back of the garment where possible. And if I'm dealing with godets, I really like to fell toward the side seam in the middle of the godet. Next, I'm going to fold the wider side of the seam over about 1/4 of an inch and cover the trimmed side of the seam. A pro tip here, a tailor's ham really makes a very good third hand. Personally, I find it really helps to keep the pain in my hands from hand stitching to a minimum. The extra tension that it gives is just a really nice an extra help. And I can use a sleeve ham also for when I'm doing sleeves. I will pin the seam at the furthest point away from me on the ham, and then I can pin the seam as needed to maintain the fold. Then I thread my needle and I will tie a small knot in the end. I do not like to use doubled thread for this as it tends to knot more often and it really isn't necessary for this type of stitch. The felling isn't really going to get any tension from wear. I then sew small stitches, picking up one thread on the garment side of the seam and then stitching that into the fold. And lather, rinse, and repeat. I do not like to use pieces of thread longer than my arm. I find they tangle more and it just causes more frustration, and then that's what causes you to put a project down and not pick it back up. I am going to do this, go ahead and do this on all of the body seams, sleeve seams, and the seam where the sleeve is attached to the body. This will leave us with a nice finish that won't fray or give us any trouble with washing. Next, I will move on to the hem and the sleeves. I'm going to be using a narrow double folded hem on both of them. Again, I'm going to use small felling stitches catching just a thread of the outside to keep it as invisible as possible. After completing the hemming, I move on to the neckline. This is where things got a little tricky for me. I goofed a bit and cut my neckline a little bit wider than I had originally intended. In order to narrow that back up a bit, I put 2 small box pleats at the center front and the center back. This narrowed the neckline by about 4 inches. Once I folded and basted those pleats into place, I cut a 1.5-inch strip of fabric to use as the facing for the neckline. I probably should have used a bias strip here, but for some reason I didn't. Placing the right sides together, I pinned the facing strip to the body, starting it at one of the shoulders, and worked my way all around. Once I pinned it all in place, I sewed a 1/2-inch seam all the way around as well. I then clipped the curves and folded the facing strip to the inside. I pressed this and pinned it down to the inside just to keep everything tidy as I was working. I then folded the unsewn side under about 1/2 inch toward the sewn neckline edge, and then I pinned everything into place. I threaded a needle, same as before, single thread with a knot in the end, starting at the shoulder where the facing seam was. I once again used tiny felling stitches, picking up just a single thread of the outside of the garment to keep things invisible. And that's it. Once I had completed all of the hand stitching, I put it on and took the smock for a spin.
Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this series. I know that I have enjoyed doing it for you. Happy sewing. If you need anything, please feel free to let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for things that are coming in the future. Feel free to share this if you know someone who maybe is embarking on their medieval sewing journey. I'll see you guys later. Bye.